Henry Cole didn't want the farmhouse. He wanted his wife back. But 2 months after Martha died, the house they'd shared in Boston felt like a tomb, and the city's noise made his skin crawl. So when his cousin offered him the old place out on Route 17 in Jericho, Maine, Henry packed up what little he cared about and drove north. The farmhouse was big, creaky, and smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Out back, across a patch of dead grass, stood the barn. The boards were gray with age, warped and splintered. Half the roof had collapsed. The real estate guy, chubby, cheerful, wearing a plaid coat, told him the barn had been empty for decades. "Don't go in there," he'd said. "Floorboards are rotted through. Whole thing's just waiting to fall." The first time Henry saw her, it was dusk. He was in the kitchen, washing a chipped coffee mug, looking out the window at the barn. That's when he noticed her, a girl in a white dress, standing in the upstairs window, pale skin, dark hair hanging in front of her face. She didn't move, didn't wave, just stared. Henry blinked, and she was gone. He told himself it was a trick of the light. Shadows at sunset could play strange games. But later that night, lying awake in the unfamiliar bed, he couldn't shake the image of her face. Over the next week, he saw her 3 more times, always in the same window, always silent. Once, in the middle of a cold November morning, she was there while snow fell thick and slow. Her breath fogged the glass. Henry tried to rationalize it. Maybe some local kid was using the barn as a hideout. But when he finally worked up the courage to walk over, crunching through frost-hardened grass, he found the upstairs had no stairs at all, just a hollow gap where they must have been 100 years ago. No ladder, no furniture, no footprints in the dust. That night, Henry drank whiskey until the room spun down, hot about Martha, her laugh, the way she'd curl her feet under her on the couch. The barn window loomed in his mind like an open wound. He didn't want to be here anymore. He didn't want to be anywhere. At 2:47 a.m., something woke him. Not a noise exactly, more like the sense of being watched. He rolled over toward the bedroom window, and there she was. The pale girl, framed by the glass, outside on the second floor of the barn. Even in the dark, he could see her eyes. She lifted one thin arm, slowly, pointed, not at him, at the road behind the house. The next morning, Henry learned that a truck had jackknifed on Route 17 during the night. The wreck happened right at the bend where the farmhouse driveway met the road. If he'd left even a minute earlier, he'd have been in the path of it. For the first time since moving in, Henry didn't feel afraid of her. That evening, he went out to the barn again, looked up at that empty window. "Who are you?" he asked aloud. His voice echoed. No answer, but in the stillness, Henry thought he heard something, soft, almost like a girl's whisper. "Don't leave." From then on, she was there often. Not every night, not always clear, but enough, watching him, making sure he stayed, and Henry did. Some nights he swore he saw a faint smile on her face, just before she faded into the shadows. Second story, night harvest. They said the first scarecrow showed up in late September, on a night when the wind rattled the corn like bones in a can. It was in front of the Petersons' farmhouse, wearing an old flannel shirt and a pair of denim overalls. Looked normal enough, except it had the same crooked jaw as Rick Peterson, same dark mole under the left eye, same smile, only stiff and stitched. By dawn, Rick was gone. His truck was still in the driveway. His wallet and boots were by the door. No one saw him leave. Folks in Jericho, Maine, didn't talk about it much at first. Out here, you learn to mind your own business. Still, the whispers started at Baxter's Feed Grain, where farmers gathered for coffee in the mornings. Some said Rick ran off. Some said his wife knew more than she was telling. But then the second scarecrow came. This time, it was old Marlene Price. The thing was in her garden wearing her yellow raincoat. Same stringy gray hair under the straw hat, same cloudy eyes. Marlene didn't answer her phone the next morning. Sheriff found her front door wide open, rain pooling on the kitchen floor. No sign of her. By the third week, everybody in town had heard the same rule. If a scarecrow shows up that looks like you won't see the sunrise. Some folks started sleeping with their lights on. Some kept shotguns by the door. Didn't help. The scarecrows just appeared. No footprints in the dirt, no tire tracks. One moment the yard was empty, the next there it was, waiting. I run the hardware store on Main Street. My name's Eddie Crenshaw. I've lived in Jericho all my life. Thought I'd seen every kind of trouble a small town could throw your way. Drought, blizzard, foreclosure. But this was different. By October, there were 15 gone. Whole families packed up and left in the night. The rest of us just kept our heads down and prayed. One evening, just before closing, Sheriff Tom came in. He looked tired, more tired than I'd ever seen him. "Lock your doors tonight," he said. "Double if you can." "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer, just tipped his hat and left. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of black coffee, staring out the back window at my yard. It was cold enough to frost the grass, and the moonlight made everything silver. That's when I saw it. A scarecrow. It was wearing my old brown work jacket and the faded Red Sox cap I lost last summer. The face. God help me, the face was mine. Same crooked nose I broke in high school. Same scar on my chin from falling off my bike when I was 10. It was standing there, in the middle of my backyard, arms out like it was waiting to hug me. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I just sat there, staring, until the coffee went cold in my hands. By the time the first light of morning came, the scarecrow was gone. And I knew, deep down, I wouldn't be here tomorrow to tell anyone about it. Third story, Hollow Eyes. Calder's Taxidermy had been on Main Street for 42 years. The air inside always smelled of sawdust, mothballs, and that sharp tang of preservative chemicals. People said you could tell how long you'd lived in Jericho, Maine, by how quickly you stopped noticing the smell. I was 17 when my Uncle Ray took over the shop. By then, his hands were rough from years of work, turning roadkill and old hunting trophies into glass-eyed creatures that seemed almost alive. But the thing about Uncle Ray was, he hated working on the eyes, said they were the soul part and best left untouched. The first one showed up in early November, a fox lying on the welcome mat just outside the shop. It was perfect, too perfect. Fur combed smooth, whiskers in place, seams invisible. Whoever had stuffed it knew what they were doing. But when Uncle Ray lifted it by the scruff, he froze. The fox's eyes weren't amber glass, they were human, pink in the corners, threaded with tiny red veins, and they moved, just slightly, catching the light. Ray locked the shop early that day. 2 nights later, another one appeared, this time a raccoon. Same flawless work, same human eyes staring up from its masked face. The sheriff came by, looked at the thing, and muttered something about kids pulling sick pranks, but you could tell by the way he backed out the door, he didn't believe that. Ray didn't say much, but I caught him reading through an old ledger that had belonged to his father, the original owner of the shop. The handwriting was faded, the paper yellow and brittle. One page made him slam the book shut and shove it under the counter. By the time the third animal came, a snowy owl with pale blue human eyes, word had spread through town. Folks whispered in Baxter's diner, and some swore they saw figures in the woods at night. Tall, thin, moving wrong. One old tie, Carl McManus, said it was the Winslow family. "They've been here since before the town was even a town," Carl said. "Ain't human, never were." When I asked Ray, he told me to shut up and keep my head down. It was the 5th animal that broke him. A black bear cub, no bigger than a Labrador. It was perfect. Muscle, fur, even the curve of its claws. But the eyes, they were hazel, and I knew them. They were my mother's eyes. She'd gone missing when I was 10. That night, I followed Ray when he left the shop after closing. He drove out to the edge of town, where the pines grew so close together they blocked the moonlight. There, in a clearing, stood a farmhouse leaning with age. No lights in the windows, but I could see movement inside, shapes gliding past. Ray carried the bear cub inside. I stayed hidden until he came back out, empty-handed, his face pale and wet with sweat. When he got home, I asked him what they were. "Not your concern," he said. "Just don't open the shop tomorrow." But I did. And there, on the welcome mat, was a new delivery. Not an animal this time. A man, stuffed. Perfect. Wearing Uncle Ray's clothes. And his eyes, brown, bloodshot, were staring right at me.